Welcome back, friends. You're listening to episode 258, where I sit down with Cherry Blossom Belle. Welcome to the Faces of Cannabis interview series, where we take a break from talking about edibles and focus on the people behind the plant. Whether it's fellow podcasters, bud tenders, gangiers, advocates, cultivators, cannabis lovers all have their stories to share, and I want to share them with you. If you're unfamiliar with Cherry Blossom Belle, you won't be after this conversation. She was an apprentice of Frenchy Cannoli, a master hash maker, and not only has she perfected the art of making hash, she is the lead hash maker at Heritage Hash Co. in California. But she's so much more than a hash maker. She's a connoisseur, an educator, a martial artist. Belle has seen much in her days in the cannabis industry. We cover a lot in this episode, including how she first met Frenchy, her experience living abroad, her culinary background that translates directly to hash making, how she's handled being a woman in a male-dominated industry, and how she fosters collaboration instead of competition. Without further ado, please enjoy this conversation. Oh, it looks like we're already recording and it didn't count down for me, but that's okay. Hello, everyone, listeners of Bite Me, the show about edibles. I'm really excited to be joined today by Belle, Cherry Blossom Belle, as she's known as online. And I was just hoping you could start out by telling us a little bit about yourself, Belle, and saying hello to everyone listening through Bite Me.
Yeah, hi, everyone. So my name is Cherry Blossom Belle. And where do I even begin? I grew up overseas. I came to the United States when I was 20 years old, or I should say I came back. I was born here in the United States, but I'm a military kid, so I left when I was really young, and I came back when I was 20 years old. But my brother at the time, Leo, he was already up in Mendocino. He had just got out of the military, messed him up a little bit. So he found solace. He went to seek a little peace with, growing cannabis up here in Mendocino. And then he invited me to a High Times Cup. I didn't hear from him or see from him. No one heard anything. He was just gone. He was gone in the mountains. And he came down one time and invited me and my oldest brother to come see him at the High Times Cup. He had just won some award, and that award was actually the Emerald Cup. He won the Breeder Cup for his Black Lime Reserve at the time, and that's actually where he met Frenchy. And Frenchy became his official hash maker. And that High Times Cup is where I met Frenchy, because him and Frenchy had a booth at that High Times Cup, the aficionado booth. And, here I am coming from a country where you pretty much get hung for cannabis. And I was a big fan of cannabis. So, of course, coming to this High Times Cup was like, unheard of. This is something that you only dream of in a country that I come from. And so walking into this High Times Cup, people were throwing joints, and there were so many it was the days of all the free samples ever, always just so many free samples and dabs and hash and bong rips. People had bongs on the table so you can smoke their flower. And this was during that heady culture time, a lot of heady glass, a lot of the goo and the goo art and that period. And but Leo, when I came up to his booth, he had presented it like fine wine or like cannabis, like fine wine or cigars. He had his menus, he had a jewelry case, he had an oriental carpet and 2 leather chairs. It was
Oh, cool.
So beyond his time. And there was Frenchy smoking people out with his 3-hole bowl, looking in his silk shirt, just looking fantastic. And that's where I got my first hit of hash. And, long story short, I ended up joining my brother because, you can't walk away from this guy had 20-foot by 8-foot plants, or 6 feet. I would say they're about 6 feet by about almost 20 feet. I would say maybe
It's a
17
grower's
feet.
dream.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I'm here. I'm ready. So I became a farmhand, and that's where Frenchy offered me to be his apprentice, because he had this beautiful vision of the hash being made by the family, with the genetics bred by the family, grown by the family, processed by the family. Still rings true to this day for ultimate quality. People who can have the ability to achieve that, it's quite a feat. So Frenchie wasn't wrong. So yeah, I moved in with him and his wife, and I traveled with them, and taught workshops, and we produced hash on the market, and under the Frenchy Cannoli brand officially. So I produced the hash for the Frenchy Cannoli brand with Frenchy alongside him. And then present day, now I'm the lead hash maker and director of manufacturing at Heritage Hash Co. And we are a micro business. So we are a retail location, but we're also the world's first public cannabis hashery. So you can see the hash being made behind our window from our retail area. So we'll do the wave and everything, just hey there. And
That's
we're
pretty
also
awesome.
yeah, we're also open consumption too. So for anyone coming up to the Redwoods, or we're 2 hours north of San Francisco, and anyone coming to the Emerald Triangle, we're basically in the gateway of the Emerald Triangle, and we have the nicest bathrooms on the 101. So
That's probably a huge draw, let
yeah,
alone all
you can
the
smoke,
fantastic
have your
hash
lunch, have a nice
and the
bathroom,
tourism. Yeah, yeah.
some
I mean,
weed.
that's important. That's
Yeah.
an important draw. But it sounds like it was all happenstance, like just the way that you and your brother and Frenchie all came together. Like this sounds like it was totally meant to be. And you
Yeah.
mentioned his your brother's display at this Emerald Cup and how ahead of his time he was, because I know Frenchie really tried to instill a lot of that. Like I took the Gangier program, and they're really about sort of elevating the whole experience and appreciating fine cannabis and comparing it to wine and cigar industries. So that's really cool that that all worked out that way. And you mentioned that you're a military kid, so you must have moved around quite a bit.
Yeah.
I understand that you lived in Japan for 10 years.
I
And
did. Yeah.
how did that shape your perspective of cannabis? Because I imagine that was one of the places where cannabis was very illegal.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, um, so I would say, like, cannabis in Japan and where I lived, like most of the countries that I lived, was just highly illegal. Um, like, you really, okay, first of all, okay, so you really had to know somebody in Japan, and the other countries I lived too. You really had to be well connected in order to find any kind of, because it's like serious contraband. And even as a kid, I grew up kind of in a Catholic military household in Japan on top of it. It's super,
This is
super.
the trifecta
Uh,
right there.
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's considered super contraband, and you really have to know somebody. Um, and Also, I was a kid. Okay. So by the time I was even slightly curious, I was probably 13 years old, maybe getting into like 13, 14, 15, somewhere around there. I know that that's when like my friends were a little curious about it too, but I was still in Japan, and like it is so expensive. We don't have that kind of money as a kid. You don't have that.
Right.
You barely have money to buy snacks at the store. Like we're not buying weed. We're definitely not buying weed. But it did shape my, little did I know how Japan, though, even though, I was in Southeast Asia when I started smoking cannabis, even more illegal. They hang you there.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's like, wow. And at that point, I was pretty okay. I was connected to somebody who got some really good stuff from Thailand, and it was so good. It was so good. It was some of the best stuff till this day. I don't remember laughing I've never laughed as much and ate so much. I could eat a table of food, but I little did I know, even though it was like super contraband in Japan, that I would be like the cultural nuances I picked up had a lot to do with how my family and I approached like craft cannabis, like along with Frenchy, because I told you Frenchy lived in Japan as well. Frenchy
Right.
lived in Japan at the same time I lived in Japan. So Frenchy and Kimberly, his wife, both lived. They lived in Tokyo. I lived in Yokohama. I was a little kid. At the time, Frenchy was a fashion designer. He designed Stingray handbags.
Hmm.
And I'm convinced my mom might have met him because my
Oh
mom's
boy.
friend bought one of his bags. I remember seeing the Stingray bag. They were all crazy about, and Frenchie had this tech where he dyed the Stingray rather than painted the Stingray because you can't paint it, it'll chip. You have to dye Stingray skin. So, he had used the leather from Cartier watches, like beautiful, beautiful. I still have one of his belts he gave me. But I seen his ad in a magazine. I was riding the train and my mom brought a magazine home and there was a picture of Frenchie and he was holding a camera like to his face and smiling. And as a kid, you don't see a lot of Caucasian people in advertisements. And I rode that train all the time. It was on the JR line. It was a little advertisement. I asked him later in life, I was like, did you have an advertisement on the JR line? And he was like, I did.
That's a
Yeah, I
full
was like, I
circle
saw you
moment.
with your camera because he showed me that picture. So funny. But we both picked up, this whole thing of how they approach things, the cleanliness. Cleanliness is something you grow up knowing and you just have. It's really hard to teach. You can teach actions of cleanliness, but it's hard to teach the mentality of cleanliness. So that's
Hmm.
kind of one thing Frenchie and I both really saw eye to eye and shaped our craft was cleanliness, organization, the mentality of organization and all these mentalities, patience. Rarely do you see, maybe nowadays more, but rarely did you ever see like a Japanese person just honking at someone on the road, just move, get out of the way. Rarely. They're so polite and patient and they'll wait days for you. And, honesty, I've left my bag on the train in Japan. There were still about 12 stops and they don't check the train until the 12th, the last stop. And my bag was still on the seat, had all my money, my IDs, my passport, my camera. It was an
Wow.
expensive camera and no one touched it because that's just how they are. They're just like not their things. They're not going to have that karma come on them. So that whole thing of honest practice, being honest and having honor in your like work and being respectful to people. Um, those are some of the really like cornerstones of the Japanese or Asian culture in general. And I think that's why a lot of the martial arts, I'm a martial artist. So it's why a lot of martial arts stem from that area. It's that same kind of like patient, cleanliness, organization, patience, honesty, honor, respect.
So you were able to bring all of that into your work in the cannabis scene as well. Because I guess they also
Yes.
have a lot of ritual. I think of like tea ceremonies, because I
Yeah.
understand some of those can be incredibly complicated and beautiful. And then that would lend itself well to the ritual of enjoying cannabis or your hash or whatever the case might be. But I
Yeah.
also understand, speaking of tea ceremonies, this is, I'm trying to make a connection here, but you also have a culinary background. And
Yes.
I think it was Kimberly that told me that Frenchy had one as well, or just that even in French culture, they seem to have a better understanding of palate from a younger age. But can you talk about your culinary background and how this influences your work?
Yeah, of course. So Frenchie and I both worked in the restaurant industry, obviously not together,
Yeah.
different points. He worked kind of in the Berkeley area at a restaurant for a while and Berkeley, California. And I worked in Southeast Asia in a restaurant. Um, and it was like a kind of, we did local dishes, like local Southeast Asian dishes, but we were close to the military base. So we had to do like English dishes as well. So like fish and chips and burgers and grilled cheese and like, but also like we had to do wok stuff. So we had to do fried rice. We had to do mee goreng. We had to do a bunch of like, Asian stir fry. Um, but that culinary, like where we vibed was Frenchie when he asked me to be his apprentice or asked if I was interested to be his apprentice. He asked me when I was on my brother's farm. The first thing he asked me was to come to his workshop. So I went to his workshop in San Francisco, started just where everyone else normally starts. Like I always tell people that when they come to my class, I started right where they were. I came to his workshop and I saw how he approached his craft a lot like how a chef in a Michelin rated restaurant approaches their craft. Again, with the cleanliness, cleaning as you go, respect for your tools, respect for your ingredients, you know. Frenchy had a deep understanding of his technique, his timing, and his ingredients. And I think I mentioned this when you were at the class, but there's Anthony Bourdain, you know, world-renowned food critic. He commented on a master sushi chef in Japan named Jito, and he has a documentary called Jito Dreams of Sushi.
It's a great documentary.
Yeah, okay, so
Yeah.
you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
And Anthony Bourdain commented on Jito Sushi and said, what separates a $30 plate of sushi from a $300 plate of sushi is only three things. It's technique, timing, and ingredients. And it translates exactly the same into hash making. It's your technique and your timing and your ingredients. And Frenchy, just like a chef, had a deep appreciation and respect for all three things. And we really vibed on that. And when I started apprenticing with him, the way we kind of worked was very much like a kitchen. Like I can see that he was ready for the next thing. He didn't need to verbalize. Like we just know what was going on in the kitchen. So it was great. Like we could work without talking. I mean, we would talk about other things. We'd talk about life, you know, just all kinds of life stuff, or funny stuff or sports or something, you know, but we wouldn't be talking about the process because we had that symbiosis of like a culinary. We really got it. We understood it. We ran it like a kitchen.
Right. I love that analogy too, because it makes it really approachable for people as well when they're starting to learn the craft themselves. And because those elements that you mentioned are, you know, when you think of cleaning as you go and cleanliness and these types of things, these are things that you can easily add to your own process without having to buy new equipment or,
Absolutely.
I mean, maybe changing your starting plant material, it might make a difference. But if you don't have top shelf stuff, you can still make a great product with these other things. And you don't necessarily need a bigger machine or these other things that aren't necessarily going to actually help in the end product. But
no, you can bake a pie at home. You can bake a pie in a commercial setting. Yeah, it's the same thing. You can make hash at home, or you can make it in a commercial setting too. It's just like
and
food.
You can still have like a beautiful product at the end, regardless of where you're working from, with these same sort of techniques and rituals that, you know.
At the end of the day, you're just processing an agricultural product. And that's what that's like my actual legal title. If you really want to get technical, I'm an agricultural processing consultant. I'm a service provider. I don't actually grow the material myself, so I provide the service of processing somebody's material for them, whether it be my own company or the farmer. But it's the same thing if you're processing your tomatoes from your garden and you're making salsa or tomato sauce. You're still doing it at home, but you're still processing an agricultural product. It's the same thing. If you look at it in that way, it's like, oh, you know, I'm just simply separating the heads from the plant matter. It's just like making tomato sauce from your garden.
Yeah.
Your kitchen.
Yeah. So you learned your craft through Frenchy. And I mean, what better teacher there was, I don't know. I don't think there is one, but I really get the sense that Frenchy wanted to empower people and be really inclusive with his knowledge, because you don't have to attend a workshop to learn everything. You could just go on YouTube and look it up in your preferred language, probably. What do you think gave Frenchy such a progressive mindset? And how do you find yourself continuing that legacy in your work now?
So I think what gave Frenchy a progressive mindset, unfortunately, to start, was he had a hard childhood. And in the nature of, and I am not saying anything towards anybody who has any religious affiliation. I'm just stating like Frenchy's experience as a child. He went to Catholic school, where they were far from nurturing. Let's just say they were far from nurturing and believed heavily in corporal punishment.
Right.
And that's very French. Unfortunately, you know, and this is a light example of the trauma this man went through, but you know, the commons slapping the kids on the hands with the ruler on, they put their hands on the desk and slap it with the stick or the ruler, this corporal punishment like that, um, really pushed, they would think they're trying to scare them into a belief, but push actually did quite the opposite and pushed this man far, 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 far away, so far, far into the mountains of Nepal.
Right.
Like that's how far that man went. He left. He went the hippie route. And that's the whole thing is he just went diving. He worked at Club Med. Club Med is a big club in like a resort in the Mediterranean. So he worked at Club Med for a while, and then he raved on the beaches of Goa. And when you live that life and you travel through countries like that, you really realize like you really see the world. You really understand like people and happiness and like being humble and humility and really like accepting everybody. You really have to, especially if you're traveling in their country. He traveled through India up into Nepal. He traveled some places in the Middle East, and those are no areas where anyone should ever kind of like you have to be loving and accepting of the people who are feeding you and helping you get from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
That's all Frenchy had was the people who got him to point A to point B on his journey, which were the locals. And you learn to love them and love their life and who they are. And you see that in your world. So um, Frenchy never liked things that only certain classes of people or only certain types of people can participate in. Like, and a lot is like, again, maybe that stems from the Catholic Church a little bit of like, you have to be Catholic to participate in this kind of thing, or what parish do you come from kind of thing. Or if you don't come from a parish, it's like not Catholic,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
oh God, so intense. But like, so I think it stems from that a little bit, but he never liked things that excluded people. He wanted everybody to be included, and he understood um, the basic like this plant belongs to everyone. It's a plant. Everyone is entitled to knowledge, and it's kind of like how we evolve as humans. We in order for us
Mm-hmm.
to evolve like our consciousness um and just to evolve like our data and knowledge on this, it has to be talked about and shared. So like it's very simple, but it's weird. It's interesting how people can't comprehend something as simple, like a really simple thing. But I think, traveling and those worldly experiences really open Frenchie's kind of like third eye to that, so to speak. Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and I really love that because it's refreshing. I feel like in a world where, I mean, the world that we're more familiar with right now tends to be a little more competitive and capitalist. So it's sort of you gatekeep information so you can make money from it. And that's a
Uh-huh.
very different approach. And that's why I think Frenchie has such a fan base of people who really appreciated the way he did things because it's so different, even though everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. Like it is a plant that is should be shared by all the people. So
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
gatekeep that information? But when we live in a capitalist world, everyone's trying to make a buck, I guess. So it's pretty
Yeah.
easy to fall into that trap, which is again why it's so refreshing. But so you were working with Frenchy, hosting workshops, and you've now host these workshops yourself with Kimberly. Um, and have you found like were there any challenges that you had to confront while working in this cannabis industry?
Yeah. Okay. So with the workshops, the only thing I can think of is just like the legal status between like varies between state to state or country to country.
Right.
Um, when it came to the workshops, I know that Frenchie and Kim are very much for as rebellious as they are, as their spirits are. I think they're very aware of the repercussions too, of
Hmm.
even like I mean, even giving information in the wrong countries can get you arrested. Handing out a pamphlet in the wrong country can get you arrested and jail time.
Right.
They're very worldly people, so they have such a deep awareness of the kind of the legal area, like the legality and like the repercussions. So that limits where we can go, unfortunately.
Hmm.
We only can really access places that we're not going to get super arrested for showing people, just doing a little demo. So that's just been the biggest challenge altogether with getting knowledge out there, is the accessibility. Um, and but and traveling and expenses, but that's so minute, so minor compared to, we don't really, like Kimberly and I and Frenchy, we were always willing to do whatever it takes for the workshops, whether we have to take those really like late flights to accommodate like a cheaper flight, especially the further we go, the more expensive. So,
Hmm.
um, those are the only challenges. That's not even really a challenge, because we're always willing to do what it takes. It's really just the legality of preventing us from going certain places. We wish we could access more places. I think that's the biggest challenge. Um,
Right.
but in the industry in general, like outside of the workshops, when you're participating in this industry, especially here in the United States, we don't have banking, or we didn't have banking for a long time. Like, we just got banking in California. And so that means no loans, that means people have to find private investors. And unfortunately, my story and Frenchy's story and a lot of other people's story in this industry is, a lot of relationships don't end up working out, because of needing to seek private investors or finance issues. But a lot of relationships don't work out due to creative attachments or personal agendas, which neither really have anything to do with the plant itself.
Right. Yeah, that's more business, I guess.
sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes I guess, breeders will get it. The creative attachment does come to the plant sometimes with certain things. But, um, I think that's the biggest challenge for like being in the cannabis industry, is not getting the support from the government, not getting the support, but, nobody wants to like you until they like you, until you're convenient for them.
Right. Yeah, and then you have to put in all that hard work, and then maybe they'll consider it. Because
And the
it's remarkable to
taxes.
me that, I mean, how long has California been legal for recreationally, and you're just getting like banking now.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
long time
I
coming.
know. It's like
Yeah.
we're they're tolerating us like we're still the delinquent bad children, but they're tolerating us because we make money. But
Right.
like they're like, because you're bad, we're gonna make you pay us even more.
Right.
We're gonna
Which doesn't
make
make any
you
sense because they're also like California's big in the wine industry,
Yeah.
and that seems to be
There's a
okay,
lot of
but
Yeah,
I
there's a
mean,
lot of lobbying. There's a lot of
yeah.
Like I said, there's a lot of personal agendas. There's a lot of lobbying, and unfortunately, California's government isn't ran the best. Like a lot of people's government, everyone has. I'm preaching to the choir. There's a lot of people out there who don't agree with their leadership, but it comes down to mismanagement of funds, too. Mismanagement of my taxes.
Mhm.
I think in my neighborhood, I just saw a whole new fleet of police cars. I was livid. I was livid. I was like, you guys just got new cars like 5 years ago. And those aren't
Oh,
like
wow.
the base price for those Fords. The base price for that type of Ford is $75,000. They got a fleet of maybe 6 to 10 of those cars in the two towns, these nice fancy black and blue police cars. I was like, that's my money. I
Right.
was like, that
Yeah.
all my money goes to that. I was like, you don't need a new police car, dude. What we need is like home ec. What we need is wood shop and auto shop and
Yeah.
and
Like,
food for kids in the
skills.
school.
That's,
Yeah,
teaching basic skills and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting to see how politicians decide to manage the money because it's
yeah.
yeah, whole fleet of new cars. It's in my mind hard to justify that case, but they must have
In
managed to do something.
Mendocino,
But the
I'm like,
personal agendas too.
why do
Yeah.
you need a new armed squad car in Mendocino, dude? We're in the redwoods.
Right. Yeah, that's an even better
Come on.
point. In Mendocino, it's
Yeah, Oakland,
yeah,
maybe. Okay, Oakland is a little scary sometimes, not gonna lie. Oakland,
yeah,
okay. But, Mendocino, you don't need a whole new fleet of squad cars. Come on now. And
yeah.
then, but we still have problems in our school. That's where
Mhm.
the issue is like, if you told me the taxes that I were paying were going to the schools, I wouldn't question it. I wouldn't look
Right.
twice. I'd be like, oh, that's dope. Okay, cool. Like, fine. Like, it's going to something I truly believe in. I'm not mad that, almost $400 every check gets taken out.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
nobody really likes that, that's for sure, but
no, and to know that it's going to their squad cars, I
yeah.
was like, "Oh, that, like, it really, like, started a fire in me." I was like, "Man, I really gotta, like, start seeing, like, how we can really make a change here, because that's really I'm really not
Yeah.
okay with that."
Now I'm curious too, because you have been working, like, in the hash industry for quite some time. You've been doing the workshops, you've been traveling. Have you had to overcome any challenges when it comes to dealing with the fact that cannabis is still a pretty male-dominated industry?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, I would be lying if I'd be lying if I didn't say people would assume, like, I was Frenchie's, assistant or his secretary.
Mhm.
But he would stand up for me each time and correct them and tell them, like, straight up, like, "Oh, she's not my assistant, she's my apprentice." And so, I've come to find that, yes, there can be actually sexism on both sides. Have awareness around that. I think statistically, us women, unfortunately, get kind of the heavier end of that.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not, I think guys have a really bad, I think us ladies have to actually give a little bit more love to the guys in the cannabis industry, believe it or not, because, like, there are a lot more, I've noticed a lot more recognition and love and respect to women who are killing it from men in the industry. More so, more and more, um, and so I think that that's, it's also, they might feel a little of that sexism too, of, like, not, like, they're not all sexist jerks, and, loving girls in bikinis smoking bong rips at the camera. It's like not all of them are like that. And I guess it's like, like I said, I've told you this, but it's like who I choose to the men I choose to surround myself with as well are
Mhm.
in this world. It's they're loving, they're kind, they're respectful. Frenchie is a great example. Frenchie was so loving, kind, respectful, honest. Of course, my partner Cody, my lab, my friend, my really good friend Richard, who runs the lab with me, one of the most respectful human beings ever. So I surround myself with really good, respectful people. But then it gets complicated because sometimes women don't set it up easy for success, because sometimes there's this expectation that we put on ourselves of, like, we have to be in a bikini or damn near naked blowing smoke at the camera in order to find validation, love, respect, more so, and it's a fine line, because there's self-expression, which, like, who's the judge? Like, if that makes someone feel
Mhm.
good and that's how they wanna express themselves, I'm not one to be like, "You can't express yourself," but
Yeah,
so if
yeah.
that's, like, really, but then it sets kind of, like, unknowing, I think, without knowing or being super conscious of it, these girls also set a false expectation for, especially if they're super popular, they set a false expectation of what us women kinda have to amount to. And sometimes men kind of might feel like, oh, like, that's kind of a woman they should probably aim to have at the
Right.
same time, and it's like, so there's a lot of kind of, like, complications with that, but who's to say, it's like I said, there's a lot of moving parts that makes that super complicated, that, like, where women, we like, we want to self-express ourselves, and we want to, like, live it in the moment and be the beautiful queens that we are,
Yes. Yes.
live that moment, girl. So sometimes I'm like, yeah, get it, live it, but at the same time, um I just want to encourage women to, because we set ourselves up for that sexism too. It's,
Mhm.
if you want to put yourself out like that, it's kind of like, well, of course, a certain type of reaction or an attention is going to come. And if you weren't liking that attention, it's like, well, maybe that's not the kind of um, attention you should put to it. But Uh, you know, I but there's like Mila, there's other women expressing themselves because like I've noticed like a change in the attitude over time in the cannabis industry.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's I can argue that it's a lot easier to be in a woman in the cannabis industry than it is to be in the sales world, the business world, like
Okay.
that Wolf of Wall Street kind of life.
Right.
Sales quotas, coming back to the office, having to do sales quotas. I've lived that life before. And like
Mm-hmm.
you get hazed if you didn't get like certain sales quota, like that Wolf of Wall Street thing, that's real. That
So
like
super competitive. That sounds
yeah,
really competitive.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and they don't the men in the business world are not respectful to women like that. No,
Mm,
rarely, or contracting. Rarely do you see a woman in that contract labor intensive work contracting world. So when a woman is in that position, it's hard, and it's like she's never going to be seen as an equal, no matter she has to do sometimes three times the work in order to get noticed. But in the cannabis world, I find like we don't have it that bad. I mean, it depends on who you surround yourself with. Yeah, if you surround yourself
always.
with those
Yeah.
really bad men, well, yeah. But I
Well,
think there's also these guys that are just killing it and so loving, so respectful, and like, and it
right.
comes from being part of the plant, growing the
Yeah.
plant, loving the
And that's what I
plant.
wanted to kind of ask you about because you're sort of saying that there is sexism in the cannabis industry, as there is probably in every industry where it's male dominated and probably where it's not male dominated in some ways. But do you think that a lot of that has to do then in the cannabis industry because we are celebrating the female plant? I feel like that must be recognized in some ways. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, and there's that
yeah.
influence too. I think she and there's we got to give love to the male plants too that we get our genetics from, but
Hmm.
she like, she I think the plant has a big influence on a lot of the guys too. That's like, they
Right.
especially the growers who grow it, they're very in touch with, a lot of them I know are some of them I know are just like again, these are the people I choose to surround myself with, but these farmers are just great family men. They're in touch with the plant, and also there's other women too that are just like there's
Oh,
women out there setting the example of like the expectation of like, well, you don't always have to be known for your body, and I know this is a feminine plant, and a lot of women like to celebrate like that. They're expressing their feminine beauty with the beauty of the plant, and there's not that, that's beautiful, that's great if that's what you're saying, that you're
yeah.
doing, like, get
Yeah.
a girl. But I love the women, like Mila, she shared her experience, did things that most women didn't have the guts to do at her time.
Hmm.
Madame Cannoli, same thing. She just traveled through India and Nepal by herself. She met Frenchy in India and Nepal. She didn't go there with him.
Right.
She did that on her own. And the same thing with now, you have these other women, Dr. Miyabi Shields. If you don't follow her, Dr. Miyabi Shields and Dr. Riley, these women are setting the standard for women being known for what the positive contributions that they're giving to the community, known for their craft, known like respected for who they are, like their craft, and not just like kind of the aesthetic the aesthetic
Yeah.
aspect
Yeah.
of the women. I think that's kind of the focus for sometimes where the sexism has happens, is there's so much focus on the appearance and aesthetics of things. But
And it's
that's
interesting that you've brought that up in a lot of ways because I've had people like I've run my podcast for about 5 years now, and I've had well meaning, well intentioned male friends in the past be like, you might like get more views on your Instagram, I guess, or whatever, if you bared a little more skin, or like maybe you did your show topless. I don't know, like crazy stuff like that. And and I'm like, yeah, it might, but I'm not sure if A, that's the kind of attention I'm looking for and what I'm trying to build here. And B, that's just not really me. Like it just doesn't resonate with who I am authentically as a
yeah.
person. And so there is that segment of the cannabis industry that is very much like, sexy girls smoking bongs and looking for that male validation, I guess. And if a woman finds that supportive and and that's authentic to who she is, then by all means. But Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. I've gotten that, and I've come to the point where I have two brothers. Okay, to be fair, I have two brothers, and for some reason, I'm the kind of tomboy girl that always chose the boy things as a kid.
I
I
was too. Yeah.
wanted to do martial arts, wanted to do. My mom wanted me to do ice skating. I was like longing and looking at the hockey team.
Right. Yeah.
like I want to do that though. That looks way more fun. But so I've come to find like some women have a natural ability to have more camaraderie with men and kind of can quote unquote shoot the shit, excuse my language, but like, and I've come to find that energy only exists where attention goes. And so I just don't put energy into that anymore. Like, oh, because I'm a
Mhm.
woman, I'm not heard, or oh, statistically, I'm not gonna like this, or oh, men only say that because it's like lately, like I just fire it back at them and realize that now is the time. We can say what we want. We worked really hard to vote and like things are changing and we can stand our
Yes.
ground. So that's all it really takes is not being like not subjecting to like all these statistics. It takes changing the statistics, but it takes kind of being tough and you want to be equal to a man. It's like, well, I come at them equal. It's the same thing in martial arts. Like they're going to hit you as hard as you hit them.
Mhm.
It's the same thing. So like if you're hitting them super light, they're going to hit you super light. If you start pounding on them, they're like, okay, we're going to
Here we
go.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in the world. So like, I've told, people are like, you should show a little more skin. I've gotten that too. And I'm just like, well, you could start getting some abs too, and showing your
Right.
abs. How,
Yeah. And they're
yeah,
like,
I don't
"Oh,
see
wait a
no abs
second.
under those that
I don't wanna be
shirt.
that guy that's shirtless with
I'm
my
like, my
fresh
boost your
harvest or whatever."
followers.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does go both ways in a lot of respects, and I love that you mention, sort of talking I guess not talking back, but, like, I heard this term recently called microfeminisms, and it's sort of just this idea of just little things you can do to sort of exert your power, I suppose, when you're out in the world. Because there's a lot of the times where women are expected to be small and act small and not speak and let themselves be interrupted. And I've really myself been trying to just take up space because I
Yeah.
am
No, yeah.
I'm a woman and I have just as much reason to be here as anybody else. And it's been kind of fun
Exactly.
actually. So um, because I'm not doing anything like that's gonna hurt somebody else, but if I'm sitting
No.
on the train, I'm not going to be all small, I'm gonna man spread right next to the next guy.
Yeah, exactly. It's
So,
like, "Excuse
yeah,
me."
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but and it comes to, like, not I again, I'm not condoning sexist behavior, I'm not condoning bullying. I'm just
Mhm,
condoning, like, you see how or I'm trying to express, like, you see how a dog plays with another dog. It looks like they're fighting. It like, when a dogs are playing, you see I have pit bulls, so, when you see them fight, it's just like, "Oh," or they're not fighting, but they're playing, and they're just
mhm,
playing, and you're like, "Oh my god, you guys are playing? Like, that sounds intense." But it's kinda the same with our male with these, and we gotta, like, I think is coming from a side of love and appreciating the characteristics of men, the characteristics of how they are. They're kind of very they're very they like growing up with brothers and stuff. They like to roast each other.
mhm,
They don't have that emotion. They don't take things so personal. Sometimes they do. I'm not speaking all men's because there's such a vast array of different kind of men and like it's not just to say like oh men are so primal and but
yeah,
growing up with brothers and me personally just being surrounded by men my whole life I just know they like to roast each other and they joke around. They're not so as emotional as us, and it's harder for them to kind of come from a side of love. One, because it's we're kind of the more nurturing. Women are naturally more nurturing, we're more emotional, so like it's harder for them to see like oh like the women are they can some guys can they see us like we're the nurturing spirit, we're the feminine, like the loving, and we do and so there are some men that are really good at communicating with women, being like nurturing in the way they talk and like thoughtful in their responses and understanding. But sometimes I feel like us women kind of have to meet them halfway too. We kind of
mhm.
have to give them a little bit of a punch on the side too, and they, a lot of them will respect that, or like love the camaraderie. It's not, doesn't always have to be sexist, doesn't always
Right.
have to be bullying, but it can be the same kind of forceful energy, but loving, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, when like I would only say that to my friend who's like, well, you can show a little more skin. I would only like say that to a really good friend, be like, well, you can work out, get some abs and show them abs.
Yeah,
It's
you're not
those
saying that to a
followers.
stranger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they're just like, okay, I feel you.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, a lot of, men have been conditioned a certain way, and sometimes there's a pretty narrow definition of what a man is supposed to be, as much as that typical narrow definition of what a woman should be.
Yeah, it's
And it's
not
going to take
for them
time to
either.
sort of allow that to expand, because I think that's better for everybody. But I love that you mentioned earlier sort of the male plant as well, and how key that is for the
Yeah.
continuation of what we're doing, because you have to have the male and the female. And to me, I see that as collaboration, and that's what's going to push everything forward, is collaboration instead of competition. And I feel like we're sort of just getting over the hump of a history of a lot of competition between men and women. And I think if we focus on the collaboration, just like in the cannabis world, where you have to have the male and the female plant working together, that can go a long way to making
that
some positive change. Yeah.
that do their part, and they do their part based on their strengths, and it's the
Hmm.
same thing where us women have our strengths and men definitely have their strengths. I always tell my partner, 'cause I don't even kill bugs. I
Oh,
can't.
really?
I'm very like, I almost come from a Buddhist perspective of things, growing up in Japan and everything, very Shinto. Like, we just, I try not to kill bugs, and he just will smack a spider.
Right.
And I'm just like, but you never know, that kind of cold, like, decision making is the stuff that can save someone's life someday.
Hmm.
Like, who knows, like, like, you never, like, there are certain things where, like, their strength is like strong in certain circumstances, and whereas our strength, our nurturing, is strong in certain circumstances. Like, so it always, like, we balance each other out through the different circumstances we go through in this world. But yeah, I think we got to give a little bit more. Like, I am all for the women, but I'm like, oh, the men do have, like, I know statistically, like, there are a lot of, we don't have it easy, women, statistically, on so many different fronts. We're definitely have the short end of the stick, but I'm seeing there's change. Those statistics the change is always bound to happen.
Hmm. Hmm.
And at the same time, it's not going to happen with us just like with a negative outlook on it. Like, we're not going to achieve any positive change trying to, like, focus on the negative things about men just being sexist and how they need to calm down and chill. And
Yeah, well, I think that's where the
yeah,
collaboration comes in versus the
yeah,
competition. And I also love how you mentioned earlier that you surround yourself with good people.
yeah,
And, when you surround yourself with good people, they're far more willing to hear feedback as well. So if they do something that's a little, you're like not comfortable with it, or they say something that you're like, that might be a blind spot for you, they're probably going to be more likely to listen to what you have to say, because they have that respect. And I
yeah,
think surrounding yourself with good people, men or women, is always a smart move, regardless of what you're doing in life. But
yeah.
when it comes to combating some sexism, that's probably also wise too. So I am curious if you have any other mentors that have supported you in your journey in the cannabis industry.
Um, so I'm gonna hit this really quick. Excuse me.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. I do. Yeah, I do. I would say, Madam Cannoli, Kimberly, doesn't get as much light as she does. She was the backbone
Hmm.
of the company. Let me just say, like, Frenchy was the creative artistic, he was the creative visionary, but Kim, like, did everything,
Right.
everything for the Frenchy Cannoli brand, for the workshops, for years and years and years and years. She gets very little credit or thank you for that, especially on things like the Facebook group. She doesn't get a lot of, that's free.
Hmm.
You don't have to pay for that. That's completely free. And her time, she devotes her time for free on that and just tries to put her best foot forward. So I think She doesn't get enough light, but she was one of my mentors because, like, I am the lead hash maker. I always tell people I'm the lead hash maker of Heritage Hash Co. That came from Frenchy, but the director of manufacturing side definitely came from Kim. You see, the director
Right.
of manufacturing side is different from the lead hash maker side. That's a lot of project management, which she was a project manager for a big company for a long time. Um, she taught me a lot about Microsoft Office, or help excel my knowledge in Microsoft Office and how to effectively implement it into project management. So she is definitely one of, like, I would say one of my mentors for cannabis, and my brother Leo. Um, I always talk about Frenchy all the time. And But my brother was the one who I came up here and learned from. My brother
Hmm.
Leo and Carlo, both of them, because they both run that company. Carlo doesn't like to be in the light so much. Leo is, like, again, the creative visionary, the face of the company,
Right.
but it's
Right.
also run by my brother Carlo. And I've learned so much from them both. And Carlo's also a martial artist, so he was not only, like, my mentor in cannabis, but martial arts. So, um, yeah, I basically, in cannabis, those are kind of outside of Frenchy. Those are, Kimberly, Kimberly, and Leo are my main, like, actual mentors who've taken the time to, like, mentor me on things. Um,
That's super valuable too, because it sounds like Kimberly really helped you with the business acumen that you need in order to do
yeah.
what you're doing. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. I couldn't do what I do if it weren't for her teaching me those, and really encouraging me to implement those skills and get those tools on my tool belt.
Hmm.
Because, yeah, she's right. They're important. They are super important to know, like, back office, Microsoft Excel, like, in order to excel in life, you need to add more tools to your tool belt if you want to broaden your horizons. So I'm
Well, and
super
it's easy to
grateful.
forget about what happens in the back end because, like you said, your brother is really the one brother is really the face of the company, and then Carlos the one in the back doing whatever it is that he's doing. But you can't have them growing without both of them working together. Or
Yeah.
Frenchie and Kimberly, like everyone knows Frenchie, and you have all these like beautiful shots of hash and all this kind of thing, but none of that works without Kimberly in the background doing her
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
None of it would have existed. None of it would have existed if it weren't for her.
Right. And so
Um,
the front end and the face is like the glamour and the things that we think of, like growing huge plants and all this kind
yeah.
of thing. But then there's the work that goes with it when you have to harvest those plants.
Yes, and it
Yeah.
takes a whole, like, it takes the crew to be noticed and stuff, and yeah, and I've actually, come to find that, I've learned a lot from my CEO of my company too. His name's Kyle Greenall. He started Heritage Hashco. He It was interesting watching him, a grower, just kind of go through the learning curve of keeping this business going. I've learned a lot, like, watching him and seeing, like, how he meant, because, like, I'm going to be honest, I couldn't do what he does. He's gone through so many challenges that would have broke me.
Hmm.
And I've seen that guy get kicked down time and time again, and he gets back up every single time with a smile. It's insane. I'm just like, oh my God, with the, like, I couldn't imagine. So shout out to cannabis CEOs out there. Like, I can't even begin to imagine, like, what that's like. That is such a hard life. And I can't imagine, because I have a business partner who is a
Yeah.
cannabis
You're
CEO,
watching it
what I mean?
happen.
I watch it
Yeah.
happen every day. And the
Yeah.
guy still has his whole family, like, has his kids and his wife, and, loves him dearly, but, it goes through these challenges, and I've seen it over the years. And, like I said, just gets back up every time and tries again with a smile.
Right.
I'm just
It
like, God,
really, that's a mindset.
that would break most people.
Hmm.
And those people like him are rarely in a they're in a thankless position. And I find that too. I'm in a very thankless position. Kimberly, Leo, Carlo. And at the time, before Frenchy passed, a lot of the time he was in a thankless position.
Hmm.
Um, And it's crazy kind of what happens when all of a sudden people realize they don't have something anymore and then they miss it
Yeah.
and they take it
Yeah.
for granted. But I remember a time when me and Frenchie were poop soup. People were like, dark hash, that's gross. We were the public enemy number one for a
Oh,
second.
really?
Yeah. I mean, here in California, especially with the rosin and just the kind of
Right.
the misunderstanding. Now there's more of a consciousness and understanding of, each product is different. One is just cake and one's pie made out of the same thing, but cake and
Yeah.
pie, butter,
Yeah.
flour, and sugar, kind of different expressions of it. But now we understand that nowadays it's the consensus is starting to really grow more. But back, when that first was starting, Frenchie and me were putting out pressed hash and the whole rosin scene was taken off. We were definitely like, oh, why would anyone smoke that dark stuff? That's gross. It's like,
Right.
but yeah, but yeah, so there were times, where this world can be a little thankless. But so
Hmm.
when you do get those thank yous, it means, you gotta hang on to them.
Right.
It
And
means
do
a
you
lot.
have any examples of a time where somebody was able to show you thanks that was really meaningful for you?
Yeah, that happens at like every workshop when
Yeah.
people show me their badge.
Right. I bet. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's gotta
you're
feel
really.
really validating. Yeah.
Yeah, anytime someone shows me their hash and just is like, I watched your video or I watched Frenchie's video or like I made this hash based on, like this conversation I had with Frenchie. That is like the most special and validating thing ever, whether it's hash or rosin. And it's like, doesn't matter if it wasn't like A grade. It's like, wow, they tried. They went out of their way and got a machine or did it however they did it and like pressed it together and like came over here wanting to show you that all day, thinking about all their way there to like show you
Mhm.
that moment. That is like
Right.
so much energy for Frenchie and me. I was like, oh, that is such an honor.
Yeah,
I
that's
wish
beautiful.
I wish unfortunate and that okay, to come back to another question, the other challenge
Mhm.
of traveling for education is I can't bring stuff with me. So like every time
Right.
somebody shows me something, God, I wish I could give them a piece of my hash because that's what Frenchie would do. He would always
Right.
pull out his head stash and like share a piece of his hash too. So
One day. One
yeah,
day.
that bums
That
me
would
out
be
a
really
lot
nice.
about
Yeah.
traveling. I can't always do that. I can do that locally,
Yeah.
but it's so validating though. Man, it's
Yeah.
so validating when people kind of just say thank you in that way.
Right. Now, do you have any hopes for the future regarding just in the cannabis industry generally? What would you like to see in an ideal world?
I would like to see people kind of just chill out on the competitiveness a little bit and the hate and the I would like a more of a focus on the bigger picture because where this is going to be real, like there's two ways this can go. We can go the capitalist way and we're going to really screw ourselves, but we can go the knowledge and education route and devote a little bit more time to being open source and knowledge and kind of figuring out you know how to set this up better for the future is where we should be putting our focus and energy. But a lot of the places that are starting to go legal, I mean, I can warn them all day. We can warn them all day on these podcasts and stuff. And I guess that's what we can do to make a change. But I'm just warning everybody, like, to stop being so competitive. It's
Mhm.
like that's going to be our demise. Like that competitiveness and like hating on your neighbor, like, oh, their stuff is boof or their stuff is trash. It's like, dude, you have any, especially as a hash maker, it's like, dude, they went to the store, got some ice. If they don't have an ice machine, they ran that, they sourced that. They're doing this with you. Like, you might not like them, or they might be a certain type of way, or you might have differences in views. But at the same time, we're like trying to do this whole thing together to change the world. So instead of oh, like I said before, is like my stuff is better than your stuff, and that focus of like, oh, my stuff has to be better than your stuff, and instead of like, how can we take both of our stuff and make the world a better place?
Yeah, I love that. And that's coming back to that collaboration versus competitiveness again, because I really think that competitiveness does really kill a beautiful thing. And Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree because I think that's just going to pave the way for more collaboration in the future. And honestly, there's room for everybody in this industry.
Yeah.
Like there could be 50,000 hash makers, I don't know, but there's room for everybody. And
There's
you don't
a
have
lot
to
of
look
room.
at it as such a, oh, I have to stamp out my competition because, there isn't enough if there, I have competitors. But I just don't see that as being true. I think that everybody brings a unique perspective or a unique thing and people will resonate with one versus another, but there's nothing wrong with that. So,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Now, switching gears just a little bit before we wrap up here, but what would surprise people about you?
Um, what would surprise people about me? I'm Filipino.
Okay.
Yeah. People are like, "You're Filipino?"
Right.
Yeah, my mom's Filipino. I'm Filipino
Okay.
American.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have any exciting projects coming up that you would like to share with the listeners of Bite Me?
Yes. I would like to let everyone know that we have another high tea event going on in San Francisco. We have some workshops coming up. Kimberly and we're going to be in Minnesota in July on the 14th. And then we have a workshop in San Francisco and Portland coming up. So yeah, if you stay tuned on the Frenchy Cannoli Instagram, or my Instagram, you can see like our upcoming workshops and stuff. But those are some of the bigger events that we have going on so far. Um,
And people should definitely check them out. I'm not sure if this episode's going to come out before the one you mentioned in mid-July, but I was able to go to the high tea in Toronto and the workshop, the Lost Art workshop, and it was a fabulous experience. And you so clearly know your shit. And the way you present this information, as does Kimberly, because she does a lot of like the history and stuff at the beginning. But the way you two put together this information and present it to the group, it's well worth the time to check it out and learn something because you can't walk away without learning something. So I would definitely recommend to people that if they're in the neighborhood to go out and check it out. But I'll link to it in the show notes as well so people can find you and the Frenchy Instagram so that they can stay up to date with that stuff. Because do you have workshops planned like till the end of the year or is this
Pretty
just the next?
much.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. We plan it a couple months ahead. So we have a couple, like I know the one after Minnesota will probably be Portland, if I
Right.
understand. And then we have San Francisco in September.
Mm-hmm.
And then October we have, I believe it's New Mexico.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
that
So you're going to
high
be
tea
busy.
event. Yeah, and that high tea event is fantastic.
And are you
Um,
doing the high tea in conjunction with all the workshops as well?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's just going to be in San Francisco. We're just doing one. It's
Oh,
going to be
okay.
Frenchy's documentary is going to be
Right.
screened, and we're going to have lots of pastries and good tea and free smoking, consumption and stuff. So I'm pretty sure we'll be doing a hookah or two.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a really fun event. And one also thing I wanted to put out there is I recently joined the Gangier Council as an
Oh,
instructor.
you did. Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
so I am a
Okay.
product special, like I do the product specialist. It's called the product specialist. It's not a full Gangier, like the whole class, but you can be a product specialist and you can get certified through this program. It's a smaller program.
Hmm.
But I teach about product like concentrates, basically like the basic understand, concentrates and solvent and solventless. I go over like what they are, what they look like, how they're consumed, kind of thing. Very, very basic. And then there's a whole consumption thing. There's a So it's basically good for bud tenders. This is really good
Right.
information for like bud tenders or people in retail or distribution or so I highly recommend looking at this program for anybody who is wanting to venture into the Gangier program. But I know it requires a lot of traveling. It might be the tuition might be a little expensive, so they have this kind of um, different program, a different certification program that can get your foot in the door too.
Yeah, I'll be checking that out. And I'll link to that in the show notes as well, because they are
Yes,
offering
please.
that program for all the certified gangiers. And so I'll definitely be
Okay.
checking it out, because I
Yeah,
think a lot of
please.
people would be interested in that, even if they just want to have a better understanding of what's out there, because it seems like as the industry matures, there's so many more options and it can get really confusing. So
Yeah.
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 I hear
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. So I just want to thank you so much for your time today, Belle. I really appreciate you
Me
spending
too.
your time with me. And I wish you all the best in all your upcoming workshops.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
That's it for this week, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And of course, you can find all the links and mentions over at the show notes. And you can find out easily when the next workshop might be and how to connect with Cherry Blossom Belle online, because she's always up to some cool, interesting things and sharing her knowledge and passion for hash and cannabis. Until next week, my friends, I'm your host, Marge. Stay high.